Most people think distraction is a technology problem. They blame their phones, social media, email, and the endless flood of notifications. And on the surface, that seems reasonable. We live in a world where every app is designed to grab our attention, every platform wants more of our time, and every moment of silence is filled with a new alert, message, or piece of content. It feels like focus has become nearly impossible. But in Indistractable, Nir Eyal makes a more powerful argument. He says the real problem is deeper than devices. The issue is not just what distracts us from the outside. The issue is what drives us from the inside. In other words, distraction is not only about what pulls our attention. It is also about what we are trying to escape. This is a major shift in thinking. Most people assume they get distracted because something shiny appears. But Eyal argues that all human behavior is driven by a desire to escape discomfort. That discomfort might be boredom, anxiety, uncertainty, loneliness, stress, or self-doubt. When we feel uneasy, we look for relief. And distraction offers fast relief. A quick scroll gives novelty. Email gives the feeling of progress. A video gives entertainment. A snack gives comfort. A message gives connection. These distractions are not random. They are responses to discomfort. That means distraction is not just a bad habit. It is often an emotional strategy. We use it to avoid difficult work, uncomfortable thoughts, or moments of emptiness. The danger is that these small escapes slowly shape our lives. Minutes become hours. Days become years. And the things we say matter most begin to lose ground to the things that simply capture our attention. Eyal defines distraction as any action that pulls you away from what you intended to do. The opposite of distraction is not focus. The opposite is traction. Traction is any action that moves you toward what you really want. This distinction matters because even seemingly productive activities can be distractions if they pull you away from your real priorities. Answering emails, cleaning your desk, checking the news, and organizing files may feel useful. But if they are helping you avoid the meaningful work you plan to do, they are still distractions. That idea is uncomfortable because it removes excuses. It means you cannot simply say your phone ruined your day. You have to ask what you were avoiding when you reached for it. You have to examine the emotional trigger behind the behavior. This is what makes Indistractable different from shallow productivity advice. It does not just tell you to silence your phone. It asks you to understand yourself. The book's deeper message is that if you do not learn to manage your attention, someone else will always do it for you. Your life will be shaped by whatever is loudest, easiest, and most addictive in the moment. But if you understand the nature of distraction, you can begin to reclaim control. You can stop being pushed around by impulses and start living with more intention. This first lesson is both humbling and hopeful. Humbling, because it reveals that distraction is tied to emotions we often ignore. Hopeful, because it means the solution is not based on becoming superhuman. It is based on awareness, structure, and skill. Focus is not a gift given to a lucky few. It is something that can be trained, protected, and practiced. According to Nir Eyal, the first step to becoming indistractable is learning to master internal triggers. Internal triggers are the uncomfortable emotional states that push us toward distraction. Stress, boredom, anxiety, insecurity, frustration, and fatigue all create tension inside us. And when that tension appears, we naturally look for a way to escape it. This is why so many distractions happen automatically. A person sits down to work, feels uncertainty about where to begin, and suddenly checks social media. Another person feels lonely and reaches for their phone. Someone feels overwhelmed by a difficult task and starts cleaning, snacking, or opening random tabs. The behavior may look irrational from the outside, but it makes sense when you realize it is an attempt to avoid discomfort. Eyal's point is not that discomfort is bad. The point is that discomfort is normal. The problem is that most people have never learned how to sit with it. They have trained themselves to escape the moment they feel uneasy. That is where distraction becomes powerful. It offers relief without solving the real issue. So, what can you do about it? The book suggests several approaches. First, name the feeling. Instead of mindlessly reacting, pause and ask, what am I feeling right now? Is it boredom? Is it anxiety? Is it fear of failure? Is it mental fatigue? Giving the discomfort a name weakens its power. It creates a small gap between the trigger and the reaction. Second, Eyal recommends reframing discomfort. We often treat it like an emergency, but most discomfort is temporary and harmless. It rises, peaks, and fades. If you can learn to observe it without instantly obeying it, you become more free. You stop acting like every uncomfortable feeling needs immediate relief. Third, he suggests getting curious about your sensations. Instead of saying, I need to check my phone, you can say, I notice restlessness in my body. I feel tension in my chest. I feel the urge to escape this task. This mindful awareness helps you experience discomfort without becoming controlled by it. The book also points out something very important about time management. You cannot control your time until you can control your attention. And you cannot control your attention until you understand the emotions that hijack it. That is why mastering internal triggers comes first. If you skip this step, every other productivity strategy will be fragile. This idea also has a bigger psychological benefit. It teaches emotional responsibility. Instead of blaming the world for your distraction, you begin to understand your own patterns. You notice that distraction often comes from discomfort, not just temptation. That awareness makes you stronger. It gives you a chance to respond differently. For viewers, this is one of the most powerful lessons in the book. The next time you are about to get distracted, do not just ask what interrupted you. Ask what feeling you were trying to escape. That one question can reveal more than any productivity app ever will. Mastering internal triggers does not mean you will never feel distracted again. It means you stop being helpless in the face of distraction. You learn that urges are temporary, emotions are manageable, and attention can be reclaimed. That is the foundation of becoming indistractable. Once you understand distraction, the next step is to create traction. Nir Eyal says that traction is any action that moves you toward what you plan to do. That word matters because it shifts the focus away from vague ideas like staying productive and towards something more concrete. Traction means intentional action. It means doing what you said you would do. Most people live reactively. Their day is shaped by incoming messages, unexpected tasks, random urges, and whatever seems urgent in the moment. As a result, they may stay busy for hours without moving meaningfully toward their real priorities. This is why Eyal emphasizes that becoming indistractable requires planning your time in advance. If you do not decide what deserves your time, other forces will decide for you. This does not mean scheduling every second of your day in a rigid or stressful way. It means using a tool like time boxing, where you assign blocks of time to specific types of work or activities. Instead of keeping a giant to-do list and hoping things happen, you place important actions into your calendar. That way, you are not just reacting to life. You are shaping it. Time boxing also forces honesty. A long to-do list can create the illusion of control, but it often hides the reality that there is not enough time for everything. When you put tasks on a calendar, you confront reality. You see what fits, what does not, and what needs to be removed or delayed. This makes your commitments more realistic. Eyal encourages readers to begin by making time for themselves, then for important relationships, and then for work. This is a subtle but powerful point. Many people schedule everything except what matters most to them. They block time for meetings, errands, and obligations, but leave their values unprotected. Then they wonder why their days feel misaligned. Traction requires giving time to what you truly care about before the day gets consumed by noise. The book also reminds us that planning does not eliminate freedom. In fact, it creates freedom. When you know you have dedicated time for important work, rest, exercise, or loved ones, you feel less mental conflict. You stop carrying a constant sense of guilt about what you should be doing. You are either in the block for that activity or you are not. The decision has already been made. This approach is especially useful in a world full of small interruptions. Without a schedule, every interruption feels harmless. With a schedule, you can see the real cost. A 10-minute distraction is not just 10 minutes. It breaks a commitment you made to yourself. That awareness helps you protect your attention. Another important lesson here is that traction includes rest. Leisure, recovery, sleep, and fun are not distractions when they are planned and intentional. They only become distractions when they are used to avoid something else. This is a healthy idea because it prevents productivity from becoming joyless. A good life includes work, but it also includes renewal. In the end, traction is about living by design rather than impulse. It is about making choices ahead of time so that your present self is guided by your deeper priorities, not by momentary temptation. That is how you stop drifting and start moving with purpose. After addressing internal triggers and building traction, Indistractable turns to the obvious enemies of focus, external triggers. These are the things in your environment that prompt action. Notifications, ringing phones, incoming emails, pings, alerts, pop-up messages, app badges, breaking news, and even people interrupting you all count as external triggers. The problem with external triggers is not just that they steal time. It is that they break mental momentum. Deep work requires continuity. Meaningful thinking requires staying with a problem long enough to understand it. But each interruption resets attention. It forces your mind to shift gears. And even after the interruption ends, your concentration often does not fully return. Eyal's advice is not to run away from technology. It is to hack back the triggers so they serve you instead of controlling you. That starts with a simple principle. If an external trigger does not help you move toward traction, it should be removed, reduced, delayed, or redesigned. This may mean turning off non-essential notifications. It may mean checking email at set times instead of constantly. It may mean removing apps from your home screen. It may mean keeping your phone physically farther away. It may mean changing settings so that tools work for you instead of against you. The book makes an important distinction here. Technology itself is not the villain. The real issue is unexamined use. A device can connect, educate, support, and empower. But if it constantly interrupts your intentions, then it stops being a tool and becomes a source of control. One of the strongest insights in this section is that even small interruptions have large effects. Many people underestimate how damaging frequent checking can be. They think a quick glance does not matter. But attention residue adds up. Once your mind has been pulled away, some part of it remains stuck on the interruption. That weakens the quality of whatever comes next. Eyal also talks about making your environment harder to misuse. This is important because behavior is influenced by convenience. If distraction is one tap away, you will need constant discipline to resist it. But if there is friction, such as needing to log in again, retrieve your phone from another room, or open a separate device, distraction becomes less automatic. The same principle applies to the workplace. Open offices, constant chat tools, and a culture of instant response can make focus almost impossible. Becoming indistractable sometimes requires negotiating boundaries, setting expectations, and communicating clearly about when you are available. The lesson is simple but powerful. You do not need to eliminate every external trigger. You need to become intentional about which ones deserve access to your mind. Every trigger is a request for attention. You are allowed to decide whether it deserves an answer right now. For anyone serious about focus, this section is essential. Do not just try harder. Change the system around you. Protect your attention at the level of environment, settings, tools, and habits. Because if you leave every trigger active, you are asking your future self to fight a battle all day long. And eventually, that battle will wear you down. Even when people understand distraction and remove obvious triggers, they can still struggle in moments of weakness. That is why Nir Eyal introduces the idea of commitment devices. A commitment device is a pre-planned choice that makes it harder to act against your own intentions in the future. This is a powerful concept because it respects reality. Your future self will not always feel disciplined. Your motivation will rise and fall. Your environment will not always be perfect. So instead of depending on willpower in the moment, you can create systems that protect you in advance. Eyal describes several forms of commitment devices. One is effort packs, where you add friction to bad habits. For example, using website blockers during work sessions, locking distracting apps, putting the TV remote in another room, or setting your phone to stay out of reach. The idea is simple: make distractions slightly harder, and you make focus more likely. Another form is price packs, where there is a cost if you break your commitment. This could involve paying money, losing a reward, or creating consequences that make failure more painful. While this approach can be effective, the deeper point is that people often need external structure to support internal goals. There are also identity packs, which may be the most powerful of all. An identity pact happens when you begin to see yourself in a new way. Instead of saying, "I am trying to focus more," you say, "I am an indistractable person." Instead of seeing discipline as something forced, you start treating it as part of who you are. This matters because identity shapes behavior. People naturally act in ways that match their self-image. If you think of yourself as someone who always gives in, it becomes easier to justify distractions. But if you see yourself as someone who honors commitments, you behave differently. The goal is not empty self-labeling. The goal is to build evidence through action until the identity feels true. Commitment devices also reduce decision fatigue. If your blocker is on, your phone is away, and your work session is already defined, then you do not have to argue with yourself every few minutes. The choice has already been made. This creates relief. It frees your mind to focus on the task rather than on constant self-control. There is a deeper lesson here about freedom. Many people think rules reduce freedom, but often the right boundaries create freedom. When you remove easy escape routes, you give yourself a better chance to do meaningful work. The structure does not trap you. It protects you from your own short-term impulses. For viewers trying to improve focus, this is one of the most useful practices in the book. Do not just rely on motivation. Build barriers against your worst habits. Make distraction inconvenient. Make your commitments visible. And support your future self before the moment of temptation arrives. That is how serious change often happens. Not by becoming stronger in every moment, but by becoming wiser ahead of time. One of the strongest parts of Indistractable is that it does not treat distraction as only a personal productivity issue. Nir Eyal shows that distraction affects every part of life, including work, relationships, parenting, and personal well-being. In other words, distraction does not just reduce output. It reduces presence. At work, distraction lowers quality. It makes deep thinking harder, slows progress, and creates stress because people stay busy without finishing what matters. Many workplaces unintentionally encourage distraction through constant meetings, always-on messaging, and a culture where fast replies are valued more than thoughtful work. Eyal argues that organizations need psychological safety if they want real focus. Employees must feel safe discussing distraction openly, setting boundaries, and questioning unhealthy norms. This is a powerful point because many people privately struggle with distraction while pretending to be productive. They answer messages instantly, attend every meeting, and appear engaged, but their most meaningful work suffers. If a workplace values responsiveness over results, it can create a culture of shallow work. Becoming indistractable at work may require not only personal habits, but also team agreements about communication and focus. At home, distraction steals something even more valuable: attention from the people we love. A person can be physically present but mentally absent, checking a phone during dinner, half listening during conversation, or scrolling while a child tries to connect. Eyal is clear that this has real consequences. Relationships are built from moments of presence, and distraction quietly erodes those moments. This is why the book encourages people to make time for relationships with the same seriousness they bring to work. If family, friendship, and connection matter, they should be protected with intention. That might mean device-free meals, screen-free time with children, or clear boundaries about when phones are put away. The book also speaks directly to parenting in the digital age. Many parents worry about how distracted their children are becoming, but Eyal argues that adults must model the behavior they want to see. It is difficult to ask children to develop healthy habits around attention if parents themselves are constantly pulled into screens. The lesson is not perfection. It is consistency and example. Another valuable idea here is that being indistractable is not about becoming cold or rigid. It is about becoming available for what truly matters. That includes focused work, but it also includes rest, play, and connection. A person who controls attention is not just more productive. They are more present. This broader perspective gives the book emotional weight. The fight for attention is not only about career success. It is about the quality of your life. It is about whether your work receives your full effort, whether your loved ones receive your presence, and whether your own mind has space to breathe. For many viewers, this may be the most important takeaway. Focus is not just a professional skill. It is a life skill. The ability to be fully present with your task, your thoughts, and your relationships may be one of the most valuable abilities you can build in the modern world. A lot of people approach books like Indistractable expecting a simple message. Phones are bad, apps are dangerous, and technology is ruining everything. But Nir Eyal's view is more balanced than that. He does not argue that technology itself is the enemy. He argues that uncontrolled use of technology is the problem. This distinction matters because it keeps the conversation realistic. Most people cannot and do not want to remove technology from their lives. They use it for work, learning, connection, entertainment, navigation, creativity, and communication. The question is not whether technology exists. The question is whether you are using it with intention or allowing it to use you. This is why the book avoids extremes. It does not promote digital rejection. It promotes digital responsibility. Eyal wants readers to ask whether a tool supports traction or creates distraction. Does it help you do what matters? Or does it quietly pull you away from your own values? That framework is far more useful than moral panic. A tool can be good in one context and harmful in another. Email can support meaningful communication, but it can also become a hiding place from difficult work. Social media can create connection, but it can also become an endless escape. A messaging app can improve teamwork, but it can also create a constant state of interruption. The book's mature perspective is that responsibility begins with awareness. Instead of calling technology evil, you learn to evaluate how it affects your attention. Then you make adjustments. You remove what harms you, redesign what tempts you, and intentionally keep what helps you. This mindset also avoids the trap of blaming tools for problems rooted in human behavior. If boredom, anxiety, loneliness, and insecurity are driving distraction, then deleting one app may help, but it will not solve everything. Another distraction will simply replace it. Real freedom comes from changing both the internal patterns and the external environment. There is something empowering about this message. It means you are not powerless in a digital world. You do not need to be anti-technology. You need to be pro-intention. You need systems, boundaries, and self-awareness strong enough to keep your tools in their proper place. For content creators, professionals, and students, this is especially relevant. The same device that helps you create can also destroy your focus. The same internet that gives access to knowledge can drown you in noise. The goal is not withdrawal. The goal is intelligent use. This balanced view makes Indistractable more practical than many books on the subject. It does not ask you to live like it is another century. It asks you to live consciously in this one. That is a harder challenge, but also a more realistic and sustainable one. Technology will keep evolving. attention will remain valuable. The people who thrive will not be the ones who run from tools, but the ones who learn to control how those tools shape their lives. By the end of Indistractable, it becomes clear that this book is not just about avoiding interruptions. It is about living according to your values. Nir Eyal is ultimately asking a deeper question. Are you doing what you say matters, or are you constantly pulled away from it? That is what makes the idea of becoming indistractable so meaningful. It is not about perfect concentration every hour of the day. It is not about becoming robotic, rigid, or obsessively optimized. It is about integrity between intention and action. It is about making choices that reflect your real priorities. If your values say your health matters, do you make time for it? If your values say your family matters, do they get your undivided attention? If your values say your creative work matters, do you protect time for deep focus? These are the questions that distraction often hides from us. We stay busy enough that we never have to face the gap between what we claim to care about and how we actually spend our days. Indistractable gives readers a path to close that gap. Master internal triggers so your emotions do not control you. Make time for traction so your calendar reflects your priorities. Hack back external triggers so interruptions do not dominate your attention. Use commitment devices so your future self stays aligned with your deeper goals. Taken together, these principles form a complete framework. More importantly, they form a philosophy of self-leadership. The book says you do not need a perfect world to live intentionally. You need awareness, structure, and the courage to protect what matters. There is also a message here about dignity. Attention is one of your most precious resources because it shapes experience itself. What you attend to becomes your life. If your attention is constantly fragmented, your life begins to feel fragmented too. But when you reclaim attention, even ordinary moments become richer. Work becomes more satisfying. Conversations become more real. Leisure becomes more restorative. Life feels less rushed and more inhabited. This is why becoming indistractable is not a narrow productivity goal. It is a form of personal freedom. It means you are less controlled by impulse, less manipulated by external demands, and more grounded in your own intentions. In a distracted world, that is a rare kind of strength. For viewers looking for one final takeaway, it may be this: distraction is not just losing time. It is losing direction. And the cure is not simply removing devices. The cure is learning to live on purpose. Indistractable reminds us that focus is not about doing more. It is about choosing better. It is about becoming the kind of person who can stay with what matters, even when the world is trying to pull you somewhere else. And in the long run, that ability may matter more than almost any other skill you can build.